I believe that a lot of the reaction is secondary to chronic sustained inflammation of the thermostatic receptors in your body that are not responding naturally.
Hey guys, thank you so much for supporting us and watching our videos. If you'd like to support us some more and get some of our merchandise like this awesome apron, be sure to check out our website at thecarnivorerevolution.com. Hey everybody, welcome to the Carnivore Revolution. I'm Serena, and my special guest today is Dr. Robert Kiltz. He is the founder and director of CNY Fertility, one of the largest, most innovative fertility practices in the United States. He has decades of clinical practice. Kiltz has discovered that infertility is caused primarily by diet and nutrition. And we are so glad to have you here with us today.
Thank you, Serena. What a pleasure. I always love watching what you're doing, learning so much in what you're sharing, and such a pleasure to be here talking with you today.
Thank you so much. And we have talked before. This time I want to touch on a little bit of a different subject after we are through with your introduction and how you got started in this. But today we're going to talk quite a bit about menopause and going through that change. I just turned 50. Things are starting to turn a corner. So I want to touch on that. But let's start for people who don't know your background and your history. Let's start with that.
Well, my name is Dr. Rob Kiltz, and I'm a fertility physician. I help those that are suffering from infertility, repetitive losses, even chromosomal genetic abnormalities. We help with that. I primarily do IVF or interventional medicine, but through the years as a physician, I've learned that there's something more than just shots, pills, and surgeries. And probably about 20 years ago, I started to integrate meditation, prayer, acupuncture, massage, and realizing that stress is such a big component of the fertility journey, and reducing stress helps reduce cortisol and epinephrine. And then I began to learn about paleo diets and keto diets. And then I fell into carnivore diet myself. And I had previously suffered from arthritis, psoriasis, migraines, kidney stones, ADHD, OCD. I had migraines as a kid. And I grew up in LA, kicked out of school in a gang, couldn't read, father in jail. So I've had many, many gifts in my life that have taught me much. But of all the things I've learned is that we've been given the wrong nutritional advice. And it turns out that a plant-based, low animal fat diet, high protein diet, may not be so good for us. And I believe that I suffered from those things as a child, and we're still sharing the wrong nutritional advice, in my opinion. And so part of CNY Fertility and now Dr. Kiltz, I blog and talk about this. I write books and I share it every day, and how you can improve your health and wellness and increase your odds of successfully conceiving naturally by going either keto, carnivore, throw in some fasting, and have faith first.
I love your story. I think you have one of the best turnaround stories ever, with all of that in your background, and then to become such a successful doctor. You are truly an inspiration, and we really appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you. And I feel so blessed to have gone through all these things. I'm grateful for everything I've ever experienced, because it's been sort of granted by God to go through these experiences and sort of to learn new things, build strength and confidence in helping. And my job as a doctor, my sister died of diabetes, a best friend died of cancer in the early 50s. And those were some experiences that kind of made me think, well, what's going on? My sister had diabetes, and I realized now that it was a plant-based diet that was her mainstay of nutrition recommended by the doctors. And my good friend was healthy and died of cancer. And I looked back and I realized that the cause is likely a standard processed healthy diet. And I'm going to throw in there excessive exercise.
Yeah, that's really interesting how so many of those things can kind of backfire on us later on. And yeah, it's just really crazy because people don't think about that at all, during the process.
That's right. And when something happens, most of the cause that we doctors say is unknown, unlucky, idiopathic. It's your genes. And I say you may be genetically predisposed to these problems, but it's the environment that turns it to the next level.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned like processed carbs and stuff. So let's talk about sugar. How bad is it for people who are skeptical about carnivore or keto or low carb? What is the problem with sugar?
Well, sugar in infrequent and small amounts is not the cause of disease. It's the frequent and excessive consumption of plants which ultimately all break down to sugars, which cause damage to our glycobiome, which damage the sugar layer that protects every cellular layer of our body, most pronouncedly the gut. When the gut is damaged, you create a leaky gut, which causes and allows the microbes to get into your vascular system and go to every organ system of your body. It allows the plant sugars, which cause glycation. And most people have heard of hemoglobin A1C, and measuring hemoglobin A1C, if it's elevated, it's not a good indicator of controlled metabolic environment, basically meaning you have diabetes or pre-diabetes. But basically, plant sugars damage our cells, and we can measure the hemoglobin A1C, which is the leading cause of disease. And so when we talk about processed foods, we're mostly talking about processed plants. But even if you're talking about processed meats, quite often they're adding sugars to those processed meats. Some of the bologna type substances, they're adding sugars. So you have to be careful about that. But ultimately, the plants are the source of all sugars. The leading cause of disease is excessive and frequent sugars that cause the single leading culprit in the cause of our diseases. Because interesting enough, there's no requirement to ever eat a plant sugar or a plant or fiber or fruits or vegetables or seeds or nuts in the human diet. And when I learned that, Richard David Feynman, The World Turns Upside Down, is when I first read about that. I'm like, wait a minute. I thought we needed sugar because it's our energy. They say sugar is the energy for your brain and your muscles. Well, it's not. Fat is. It's never sugar. It's never glucose. They must be converted to fat in order to be the energy of your mitochondria. And so I believe much of the science is incorrect and the story is incorrect. And so our brain just keeps on going right to, well, you need sugar for energy. You need sugar for your brain. You need sugar for your muscles. Not one bit.
Yeah. 2 essential nutrients, protein and fat, not 3 like people think, right?
Well, amino acids and fatty acids. And actually, fat is the most important one. That's what people they focus on protein. Wrong. Fatty acids are the most critical thing in your body. You either eat them or make them. And almost no one eats fat. The standard nutrition is fruit, fiber, vegetables, seeds, nuts, and lean meat. Okay? There's no fat in that. But everyone's getting fat. Well, the question is, how come? Well, the reason is because amino acids and simple sugars must be converted to fat in the liver via insulin, or you die. So if you look at type 1 diabetics, their sugar levels rise. They have no insulin. They actually get very thin before they die, unless in the modern world, we give them insulin because we're still feeding them what? A plant-based diet. Well, now they have insulin. They're able to convert sugar to fat in the liver. And if you look at cirrhotics, liver failure patients, you'll find that they're also very emaciated and skinny. Well, how come? They have insulin and they have glucose. I thought glucose and insulin's job was to put sugar into the cells and make fat. Nope. It's to make fat in the liver. And when you look at the term hepatogenous diabetes, it's a very, very important term. The majority of cirrhotics develop type 2 diabetes. They have insulin, they have sugar, but they're emaciated and skinny. And so what you also may not know is that amino acids, so proteins break down to amino acids, and in the liver, they must be converted to fat as their primary metabolic processes. Because the majority of amino acids you eat don't suddenly become big muscles, do they? No one's growing their muscles without doing heavy lifting. And many people do less lifting, but they're taking steroids in the form of testosterone or other anabolic steroids, which are causing their muscles to get big. But it really is confusing to so many of us, the why part of it. And the why is simple. We're eating the improper human diet for humans.
Yeah, and I can honestly say that I believe that my dietary needs have changed a little bit, even since I started carnivore. I was 48 when I started, And I was able to do, the 75-25% range, fat to protein ratio. 80-20 worked great for me. Then 80% fat, 20% protein. And now I honestly know that I do so much better on 85 to 90% fat. And people just don't realize how important the fat is for our brains, that every cell in our body needs that.
Right. And when you ever notice that butter never molds?
Yes, I keep mine on the counter.
Right. So fat actually is anti-inflammatory when you eat it. It suppresses the microbes in your gut. So are the microbes in your gut important?
Yes. No.
They're deadly.
When you ask me questions, I don't know the answer to.
No. You have the right answer. That was the right answer.
Oh, okay.
The right answer, because everyone says the microbiome is the most important thing. Well, would you put microbes in an open wound? Would you put them in your eyes? They happen to be there. That doesn't mean they're good for us. They're bad for us when they over proliferate. And remember, the good bacteria are also the bad bacteria. And if you read James Henry Salisbury's work, Salisbury Steak, an MD, Albany Med, 1850s, went on as a microscopist and a chemist to show that his men in the Civil War were dying of dysentery. The microbes were proliferating in the gut from a plant-based diet. And he showed that basically the microbes went up through the esophagus, up into the upper respiratory and lower respiratory environment, killed many of them. It went out through the lower gut, and basically it goes up into the vagina for women. It goes up into the lower urinary tract for men, and it begins to track up because bacteria and yeast are everywhere in our body. And so when someone says, well, good bacteria and bad bacteria, and the bacteria communicate with your brain, well, they do, because microbes, bacteria and yeast and sugar make what? Alcohol in your gut. Our children, our young and old, are basically eating a high plant-based diet, which comes with the microbes, by the way, and they make alcohol, methane gas, heat, aldehydes, and other toxic chemicals, depending on the microbe. So again, we make scientific theories and judgments. Maybe we have to think again that maybe we're not so accurate, in my opinion. Is it better to have lower levels of bacteria and yeast in the gut? Yeah. Are there bacteria and yeast in the vagina? Well, there are, but why are they there? Well, because we're in an environment where bacteria and yeast are everywhere, right? And your immune system is constantly working to keep the microbes at bay and prevent them from coming in through the epithelial layer, which is covered with a sugar layer called the glycocalyx. The sugar layer is energetically charged to repel the microbes. But when you damage the glycobiome, because of a high sugar environment, you're dissolving it, which now creates vaginal infections, uterine infections, skin infections, upper respiratory and upper GI tract infections, dental caries, and gum disease. Highly on the rise, correct? One of the leading causes of all of our problems. And I know my good friend Kevin Stock says that basically, it's the obvious. If you have bad dental hygiene, it's a sign of everything else going on in your body. But sugar is the killer, but not sometimes. It's just because you're eating it most of the time.
Yeah, it sounds confusing, but it makes perfect sense. Okay, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about today, as I mentioned at the beginning, is I just turned 50, and so hormones are a little bit out of whack. So I wanted to talk some about that with you. So can you tell me, do we know what causes hot flashes?
Well, not really, other than the loss of the estrogen withdrawal changes your thermostat sensitivity. And for some reason, it sends out a neurochemical reaction that causes hot flashes. Some people get them, some people don't. It takes longer for some people to get rid of them. Many people or some people don't ever get rid of them. But going through menopause is natural and normal. I believe that a lot of the reaction is secondary to chronic sustained inflammation of the thermostatic receptors in your body that are not responding naturally. It's almost, think about it like a seizure reaction, like epileptics, right? There's some inflammatory reaction which causes a rapid shower that causes the sudden neuromuscular reactions that an epileptic or seizure person goes through. Well, the same type of things I think are going on when it comes to hot flashes. Now, I'm a fertility doctor, and yes, I'm a reproductive endocrinologist, but I don't day-to-day take care of people going through menopause, because a lot of what we learn through the years would treat people with hormone, which then turned out to cause other problems, including cancers and heart disease. So what I'm learning in the keto carnivore world and the fasting world is that the more you can reduce inflammation in your body, the more fat, less protein, eliminating carbs, likely you'll sort of heal those receptors and the inflammatory markers that, or the areas that send out those hot flashes. Whether or not someone should use hormone replacement therapy, I don't have that answer. You have to talk to a practitioner. There's a lot where people are using pellets and natural creams and all sorts of things. But like anything else, the less you use hormones and drugs and medications, and even herbal medication, by the way, are plant pharmaceutical medicines that you need to learn for yourself and do the research. But I would say that people are more susceptible to the hot flashes, the mood swings, the depression, anxiety, the fearfulness that goes along with a change in your hormone environment, male and female, by the way, which comes back to all secondary to plant-based, low animal fat diet.
What about exercise? How important is exercise for somebody who is getting up there in age and starting to go through those hormone changes? I mean, I know exercise is important, all the time, but how important is it when you get older?
Well, I don't actually like the word exercise, and I don't use the word everyone has to exercise. I think the most important thing is get out there and do something and be creative. Go for a walk. You want to lift some weights? Great. You want to go work in the garden? You want to work on your farm? Go do those things. For me, I get in my pottery studio. I like to take things apart and build things. So I like to do a lot of those things. I used to exercise a lot. Back aches, knee aches, joint aches, sprained everything, strained everything. I've got some shoulder calcific tendonitis going on because I think I was overdoing the lifting. And so I go back, for 10 years, I didn't exercise. I was pretty much the same weight and same energy. So, but I think it's important to move. And what happens as we age, our sedentary lifestyle builds in. Here I am sitting, but I usually stand at my desk at work. I do a lot of standing work. That really is helpful. So I think, getting out and, joining a gym or going for a walking group or a biking group or yoga group, or I think we need to do more group which keeps you moving, which you can label as exercise. But in my 5 causes of disease, plant sugars, plant antigens, plant chemicals, fermentation of plants in your gut, and excessive exercise. That's our biggest problem. And many people are doing it because they're constantly doing it. And think about a car. The more you run your car, the more you move it, the more miles you put on it, short amount of time. Does it last longer? Nope.
No.
Nope. So just be clear. Go out and enjoy what you like to do. If you want to run marathons, fantastic. But the evidence doesn't prove that you're going to live longer and be healthier. People drop dead of that. Remember, excessive exercise or exercise all the time. This is what I like. That's why I like resistance work, because you're working your muscles that you might have worked in the fields or do something else or hunting, but we're not doing that today. So the resistance work is good, which I like to do. I do light weights. I do light stretching. I mostly like biking because it's not pounding, but I try to stay off the roads because those trucks go by and it's like, wow, because you moved over and you never know. It could be the last moment. But do what you love to do, even though it's risky, I say. But I think it's good to be moving and stretching, but pottery, painting, poetry, music, that's the things we need to be more creative in life. That's number one.
And for people who like to walk, walking is great after a meal. It actually improves your digestion. Get some AirPods or some headphones, whatever it takes. Find yourself a good audiobook. It's my favorite time of day is to listen to my audiobook and go for a walk.
Well, audio is my favorite, and I often will get on my bike or go for I used to run, but my running, you could walk beside me running, but I would run for 10 miles and I would listen to books, and I always listen to inspiring books and stories because you want to build the mind. So I do the same thing in my pottery studio or painting, or if I'm biking, walking, whatever it is, or driving, I'm listening to a book that's inspiring me, because, a lot about health and wellness, the part we don't talk about, I think, enough in the carnivore space is it's what you put in the mind and the mouth and the motion of the body. You got to be doing what you love to do, but you're trying to make it better. And the word is the most important thing. It's the mind game.
Yeah, it really is. Okay, let's talk about fasting. I know you like fasting. And so can you talk for a minute for people who don't fast and talk about why it's easier to fast if you're on a low carb diet, and why is fasting good for you?
Well, fasting is likely the most ancient spiritual practice that we have done as humans. And likely in our evolution, we naturally fasted because we didn't have snack bars and we didn't have methods of storing our food for lengthy periods of time. We likely hunted, maybe days, if not weeks, and then we feasted. And it's important to know that we get fat fast for a reason, because fasting requires fatting. And if you don't get fat and you're skinny in a famine, you're dead. And so one of the things I've learned, though, is in general, most people that eat a plant-based diet and 3 meals a day, their GI tract is always full of food, the day they're born to the day they die. And so that means they're secreting into their hepatic portal system to the liver, amino acids and sugars all the time. When they're asleep, when they've skipped a meal, doesn't matter. They can go a day to, it may take up to 3 days of no food before the food in your intestines goes down to your colon, which is really not a digester. It's a reabsorber of some vitamins, minerals, and water. And so fasting empties the gut to allow the chemicals, sugars, antigens, and fermentation going on in your gut to go way down. And so now you've cleared your GI tract and your bloodstream of all the toxins and the sugars, which are harmful to your body. Now you begin to get brain clarity. I think it takes 3 days. Now, I typically only eat 1 meal a day. I do not eat any significant carbohydrates. I never eat a complex carb. I might eat a simple sugar from time to time. So that means they're going to get out of my GI tract fast, and that autophagy, so dead, dying, and damaged cells, can be cleaned up during that time of fasting, which autophagy is always happening, by the way. It's just more observable when you're not throwing all these toxins into your body. And even as a carnivore, because amino acids are fermentable. People don't know this. Amino acids are fermentable. Now, is fasting the most important thing you need to do? It's not. Many people just stay straight, I think, carnivore, high fat, low to medium protein, and very low to no carbs, and do great. But I think It's one of those things that gives you food freedom. It gives you the power when you're not fasting, and then there's something like, oh, I don't really want to eat it. Now you'll be able to go like, no, thanks. And you don't eat it. But I think fasting, again, it's spiritual, it's food freedom. It just gives you such energy and clarity. And remember, your body burns what for energy? Fat. I don't care if it's fast energy or slow energy. It's always fatty acids. It's never, in my opinion, glucose. And so fasting, we just finished our second 5-day fast of the year. I typically do a 5-day fast January, July, and we just did it in our Mighty Tribe, KMT, Kiltz's Mighty Tribe. Everyone and anyone's welcome, vegan, vegetarians, Mediterraneans, pescatarians, and carnivarians. We invite everyone because, again, wherever you're at on this journey, fasting, I think, is really, really beneficial and can help. And when you have a cheerleader or a coach like yourself, talking to someone one-on-one, how do you do this? How do I do this? And I talked about it because you gotta talk it up in the mind before it becomes truth in our real world.
And we all have fat on our body. So the fact that we are burning fat for fuel is what makes fasting so much easier for somebody, especially on a low carb diet, because your body just knows what to do.
Yeah. And I like to call our nutritional high fat diets because Atkins, paleo, keto, and carnivore are high fat diets. They're not low carb diets because the brain always goes to what you think about. Well, I eat low carbs. Well, this says low carb on it. Well, but in fact, it's all carb. But we're mystified in the magic. And the biggest conundrum here is like, well, low fat's so important for you. Well, it's the reason we're all sick is a low fat diet. But yeah, you're right. It's magic to me. And the more you're on carnivore or your keto or paleo, a high fat nutritional plan, and if you're already practiced, like I do one meal and maybe one or two snacks sometimes, and it's nearly always fatty raw meat, dry aged, which I do myself. I love it.
And I love what you said about being low carb, and that I think it's just so funny how when we go to the grocery store, we see all of these things that say keto approved or keto certified. And I think the main takeaway for me that I want people to know all the time is don't fall for the hoax. Like there is no organization out there certifying things as keto. They just make that up to make you buy it if you're on a low carb diet and you think that it's okay. But we shouldn't be eating things out of a package. We shouldn't be eating things with more than just a couple of ingredients. And that's the key, right?
It's either been paper wrapped your meat or plastic sealed for whatever reason we do that today. But I always get the freshest, best meat. I spend a little bit more on meat because it's more nutritionally available for humans. Plants, actually, you think about it, we've had to process plants in order to make them more readily available. But meat, you don't need to do that. And eat the fat, eat the organ meats, eat the glandulars also. It may even be for women, eat some ovaries. For men, eat some testicles. You might find that is helpful for you. But it's a mindset more than anything.
When my daughter and my 14-year-old and I were talking about fasting one time last year, and I was just talking about how good it is for you. I was talking about autophagy, and I was trying to explain that to her. And she said, so basically your cells get bored and they just start cleaning up. And I was like, that is such a great way to explain it to somebody that's not scientific, that your cells just get bored and start doing things. So do you think that it's especially beneficial for somebody going through menopause to fast, or is it just kind of the same for everybody?
I think everybody, it's important to do some fasting. Again, I even think if it's the one meal a day, and especially if you're working to lose weight, I think it's important. But again, fasting, it still isn't the thing, but it is a magical thing. When you've gotten either keto or carnivore and you've really cleaned up, and I was listening to Sean Baker today, just kind of talk about, everyone can do this. And my brother had a phrase a long time ago, potato. No, it's a long word. It's so hard to say. The point is, is that those things in life are the most valuable, are the hardest to obtain. And so if once you don't succeed, keep doing it, but hold the mind set to the magic of the way. And that's why faith, I think, is number one. And the positive thinking, whether you're Buddhist, Muslim, Jewish, atheist, agnostic, Christian, it doesn't matter. We're human beings on this amazing human Ferrari journey. We're lions. We are lions. And we know that, but we've been fed a story to feed us a diet that's deadly, and it's addictive, and it makes you weak and meek. It makes you a slave, a soldier, a peasant, and a prisoner. And I know these ideas are very radical, but it's a simple story. We're addicted to plant products. I can't go without it. I'm get hangry, which, we create stories. We're stories. I love stories. That's the most powerful thing. And this is just a story. Can you be a vegan and live a long time? Absolutely. My grandmother, Angelina Cimentelli, she was 104. She drank Pall Malls, drank Manhattan, smoked Pall Malls, and she lived a long time. And, she had Alzheimer's and dementia and many other problems, which I believe are all secondary to a plant-based lean meat diet.
I believe that because I definitely had some brain fog before I started carnivore. I was eating like 75% of my plate was vegetables. I didn't even eat a lot of fruits because of the sugar. And I was eating just chicken. I probably hadn't had red meat in close to a year because it's bad for me. And man, I had a steak and some hamburger patties, and that brain fog lifted, and suddenly I could see things differently.
Well, it's interesting. I was listening to Lisa Wiedemann the other day, and she had an optometrist or an ophthalmologist on, and she had some really great slides, Carnivore Doctor. And it was one of those interesting that if you look at cows, whether they eat grass or grains, the proportion of linoleic acid is in the right, although the omega-3s, omega-6s are in the right ratio, no matter what they eat. And so I thought that was because they're the perfect ruminant, and they're made to, that's why I think beef is the very best for us. But I did the same thing. I used to eat lean meat and salads, and I had the seeds and the nuts and the berries and all the stuff and the cheeses, and I looked good. I looked sharp, but I was hurting, and no one knew it. Bowel bleeding, arthritis, psoriasis, migraines, and it was paleo, then keto, and finally carnivore 13 years ago that turned it all around.
And I love your saying, I quote you all the time, hope you don't mind, that keto is for the keto is for the masses and carnivore is for the masters. And I just love that because I actually find carnivore to be easier than keto. And I love it. And I do feel like I feel like I could conquer the world. And I never felt like that in my whole life. And
that's where, let's see, anxiety and fearfulness. And I was talking to Bella the other day. She was on our Mighty Tribe, and she was sharing the story. Her life was memorizing all these long piano pieces and going on stage, and she'd have stage fright. And eventually, she got okay with it. But when she went carnivore, it was like, whoa, that's all gone. And so I think that is so amazing and so powerful. And one of the things that we haven't talked about is napping and rest.
Oh, let's talk about napping. I like naps.
Well, if you look at most carnivores, dogs and cats, they're both carnivores. Dogs are not omnivores. They've been trained to be omnivores like cats. But if you look at wolves and lions, they nap a lot, and we should do the same. So I take 1 to 3 10-minute naps a day, and I just go lay on the couch, even in my chair sometimes, or if I'm in my car, not driving, I'll lean back, and I usually put my timer on for 10 minutes. Quite frequently, I catch it. I wake up 30 seconds or a minute before, and I'm going through my gratitude prayer. And I think that's something that people need to do more of, because if you think about the go world we're in, and the energy drinks, and I need my energy. So you eat 3 times a day, an energy bar. When you read what's in an energy bar, it's sugar, and which is crazy. But napping is resetting the synapses. So you get tired because the synapses of the brain need to be reset. And now you feel better. So quite commonly, I'll just I need 10 minutes, 5 minutes even. And I think that's very important. I don't sleep. I do 6 hours, 5, rarely 7 for my 9 to 3 in general, sometimes 10 to 3. Sometimes I sleep into 3:30 in the morning. But I think that if you're awake and you're saying, well, I can't sleep, well, it's get up and do something. I get a book, or I get my pad out and write, or I come into my studio. But God's given you plenty of time to sleep when you're dead. When you're awake, think of the gratitude of being awake and not of the negative. Oh, I'm not going to get enough sleep. I got to do this. Go work on what you love to do.
So aside from napping, if you had one piece of advice for people, what would that be? Did I stump you?
Well, the most important thing is that you lead your life, no one else. And the best leaders in life are lions. And there's a really great book called The 3 Magic Words, one of my favorite books, U.S. Anderson. It helped me realize the truth about all of us. We're the gods. Whether you're vegan, vegetarian, Mediterranean, take control of your mind. And the mind is the master. And when you think positive and you read positive stories and life-fulfilling stories, it'll bring you more ideas and energy to lead your life in the very best way. I personally think carnivore is the most amazing, but plenty of people live a fine life as a vegan, vegetarian, Mediterranean, or probably pescatarian. But to me, it's fasting and faith.
Love it. I think that's a great place to stop. Dr. Kiltz, always such a pleasure.
Serena, God bless you. This was amazing. Love the Carnivore Revolution. What you guys are sharing is magical. And as we're lighting up more stars, more lions that have been placed in the pig pen are coming back to the lion's den. And we're excited about that. So keep doing it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Kiltz.
Thank you. God bless you.
And we'll see you next time here on the Carnivore Revolution.